Hey, I can't get that one with the text to align for me, so there's no way it's going to align for Jennifer. Like, I think that is the best that I can get it for me, and it cuts off. Well, you can read the left-hand side, but it cuts off the right-hand side, yeah. I might have to go with this one, or one of the ones that I've used before, because the Watson one doesn't look like I can get it to work. I have to make some more adjustments to that one, it seems. I don't think I can. Not the Donald Watson quote. I don't think I can, because it already is as kind of small as it will be, and it's still too wide. But it looks fine outside of TikTok. Like, I just literally tested it. Yeah, I literally just tested it, and it looked fine. But yeah, as soon as I chuck it on TikTok, it doesn't align properly, so I can't read it. That's fine. Break the ice a little bit. I can use one of the ones that we've gone for a different night. Last night I ate pork chops. Yeah, but I mean, when people point out that they love meat or they've just eaten meat or any of these other things, these are not big shocks to us. It's almost as though like you jumping in here and announcing that you brushed your teeth this morning, expecting me to be like, wow, really? Like, you did something that the vast majority of the world do on a daily basis. This is a huge shock to me. I never expected that. Not sure where Roger is. Ah, there. I don't think we're trying to make anyone be vegan. We're just trying to kind of make, if you want to use that word, people see the wrong in the decisions that they're making. We're making people see the light, because most people have no idea really what they're doing and what their money goes towards or what they support.
Do you think people agree with that, or do you think they'd say they know exactly what they're doing?
Well, I think they do. But it's a bit like, you know, it's with a lot of these examples we've used over the last couple of days. If like the car, it's like, I think I know how it works, but actually, if we got down to the nitty gritty, I don't know how it works. And I think that's the same with. I mean, maybe they know a little bit more when it comes to the food system, because some of that's a bit obvious. But do they know like where leather comes from, for example? Do they know what the process that goes into that? Do they know anything at all about vivisection and perfume, for example, or makeup? I don't know. Are these the things that people think about on a general basis? I don't think I ever did.
Kristen says they cannot give up burgers. Well, you don't have to.
No, you really don't. They're even still called burgers, so you just remove the rights violations, so they're better.
I know it's a joke. Save the animals, eat vegans. It doesn't even make any sense, does it? I mean, if you're gonna make jokes, make them make sense.
Yeah. But that I can remember reading that years ago, and it used to say vegetarian, so it's just been kind of like evolved.
Yeah, like that thing about what Native American word for bad hunter.
Bad hunter, right? Yeah.
You've heard them all before.
Yeah. I mean, maybe vegan somewhere does translate as bad hunter. It wouldn't be completely inaccurate, but it would be because they choose not to hunt, as opposed to not being very good at the action of hunting.
Maybe non-vegan means bad gardener.
Maybe, yeah.
Although it's not as though you have to be a good gardener.
I mean, yeah, that would probably start a whole different.
Yeah.
But that, yeah, I mean, there's this, or you know, morally ill-aligned or unaligned.
Right, so where do we start? Veganism is not a diet, people. It's funny how that's about the only thing that ever gets mentioned, isn't it?
More or less, yeah. I mean, we can touch on what a lot of people, there's not that many in the room at the moment, but even the non-vegans, I'm sure you've heard of the event stroke sort of organisation called Veganuary. And although that's very sort of centered around food and diet, it's one of those things that a lot of people now take part in. And I would highly encourage everyone who's never thought about doing this before to at least give it a go through January. Do it without the sort of bias of this is going to be crap, because if you go into anything with that kind of mentality, then you won't enjoy it regardless of what it is. But I highly suggest that everyone does that, and potentially whilst that event is going on and people are enjoying the food and trying new things, we hopefully are going to sort of back that up with some live streams and things like that, talking about actually what veganism means and what it entails, and the fact that it's actually a philosophy. It's certainly not a diet. Of course, food comes into play all the time, because most people eat on average of 3 meals a day plus snacks plus everything else. So yeah, food comes up probably more often than any other item, but it's no more important to the philosophy than any other aspect of using animals. They're all equally as unjust. We're just talking about a numbers game, really.
All right, we've got Mark Moore. So I'm looking up what the dark side of what? The dark side of something.
Oh, is that Mark that was releasing the book?
Yeah,
I did have a brief look the other day. It looks really interesting, actually. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, anyone that comes in here on a regular basis, you'll know that me personally, well, I'm Roger, really. We're not interested really in food and nutrition and that sort of stuff, and neither of us are very passionate about those subjects. But I think Veganuary is a great way of bringing people in, because if you're willing to try the food, even on a sort of just a food level, and you're not looking at anything else, you're not thinking about ethics or morality, you're just trying some new food for a month, I think that you're going to be far more willing to have a conversation about other stuff. If you're sat there eating something and you already enjoy it, there's less reluctance, there's less resistance. So I think that's a great time to have some of these conversations when people are already a bit more willing, because a lot of the time the decision's been made before they've even got a chance. They'll look at it and go, oh, vegan, I don't like that. And it's like, well, you haven't even tried it. You haven't even given it a chance. So I think the people that are willing to engage with Veganuary and they take that on and they go plant-based for a few weeks or so, it's always a more receptive time to have the chat.
This book only seems to be on LinkedIn for some reason. No, actually it said Amazon, didn't it? Yeah, okay. Amazon.
We've got our first guest. Would have it let me accept them? There we go.
You all right, mate?
Hiya, Henry, you all right?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good.
Just explain to me why vegan's good.
Why it's good?
Yeah.
Well, obviously, from the victim's perspective, it's very good because it means they're no longer exploited and oppressed. But we could go a bit deeper and think about the environmental aspects and everything else if you wanted to. The greater good is absolutely enormous.
But the thing is, I like a good cheeseburger.
Yeah, I mean, so did I once upon a time, and I still potentially do enjoy a good burger. I just cut the rights violations out of it.
Well, that is true, but
Because I mean, one of the things that I like to explain to people is, so I've been vegan 10 years next month, and let's be perfectly honest, if you try something and you don't enjoy it, you don't keep eating it, right? So I've managed just fine for the last 10 years, where I never get to something I'm like, oh, that's disgusting, and I'm struggling to find food. Food is so unimportant to me because I don't worry about it, I don't think about it, it's just normal. So all of the things that once upon a time that I used to enjoy, I've now found adequate replacements or replications for, so I don't even think about it. It's like such an inferior part of my decision-making process now. So all of the things, I haven't lost out on anything at all, apart from the rights violation. So like, if that's really what it comes down to for most people, like they're worried about losing taste. Yeah, it's all replicated.
So I go shooting, right? I go pheasant shooting, right?
Right.
But most things, they're bred to be killed.
Well, but that's the fundamental wrong. We don't have the right even to breed them into existence, to bring them out. That's not a justification for doing so.
There it is. It's tasty.
Well, that's not a justification either. That's a personal pleasure.
Yeah, it's tasty.
Yeah, but some sex slaves are bred on purpose. So, but I mean, we wouldn't use that argument there, would we?
No, and we certainly wouldn't use
Some
the
people
argument that a sexual predator said I enjoyed it afterwards as some sort of moral justification either.
They're very tasty.
Yeah, I would. To be honest, it doesn't really matter because it's just an animal. Animals, they don't really have proper lives.
But they don't have proper lives because of us.
Yeah,
So that's it. That's why things need to stop. They could have autonomy. They could have freedom. We just need to stop exploiting and oppressing them, and we can do that.
but they're really tasty.
Well, you're not arguing that they're
Taste can
not.
be replaced.
You know, you're not going to get an argument from us that they're not tasty. It's a question of morals. You know, it's nothing to do with taste.
But who cares about the morals? It's just food.
Well, I do.
Well, you would if it was the other way around. If someone decided that they wanted to potentially keep you and then let you free so they could hunt you, you'd want someone to oppose that. You're just lucky that that's not the way the world is.
That's called sport.
It's in the Hunger Games, right? Like, yeah, this is how people think. We're just lucky that we don't live in a world where that exists. But for pheasants, for pigs, for for chickens, for sheep, it does exist. That's the world that they live in.
To be honest,
It's not the world we live in, but it could be.
to be honest,
Absolutely no. Don't tolerate that on here, I'm afraid, or anywhere else. In fact, shouldn't have to tolerate it anywhere in the world. But that's someone that came on to represent the non-vegan crowd. So
Somebody said they've reported us 10 times already.
for what? Hopefully you reported that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to report anything, it probably should be that.
Yeah, I guess so. I imagine they might be back on with a different account any second. Anyway, I found this.
That was very disappointing. I mean, there's just absolutely no need for that at the end of the day. If you want to come on and sort of like call us silly names or anything like that, that's your prerogative. But this, to be racist is just absolutely deplorable.
I don't understand racism, Andy.
I don't. I mean, the hatred didn't make sense for us, and then that just completely came out of nowhere. So,
yeah. But kind of like I don't like people who are different in colour. I mean,
yeah, it's absolutely absurd, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah, I've never been able to understand it. I did find Mark's book.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, Mark Moore. Yeah, so it's on Amazon. It's 10.92. That's euros, so it'll be cheaper in.
So it's cheaper in pounds. Is that ebook or is that physical book?
No, that's a paperback.
Okay.
The hardback is 30 euros, and there's no Kindle edition.
That's pretty reasonable for a paperback.
Oh, $8.25 to buy a Kindle edition.
As I was talking about before, I actually prefer that these days, just because it makes things easier.
That's right. Yeah. So the dark secret of an animal farmer, Mark Moore courageously exposes the concealed realities behind the picturesque facade of the farming industry. Once a farmer, deeply entrenched in this world, Mark transforms into a dedicated vegan advocate, unraveling a compelling narrative.
Are you able to jump on and talk with us, Mark? If you are, come and tell us a bit about it. Sounds interesting.
And it's only been out since the 6th.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember if it was Saturday, as in a couple of days ago, or last week. He came in one of our shows and explained a little bit about it then. But obviously the chat was moving so fast that I was just kind of reading what was being posted. I did have a brief look at their page. Yeah, certainly very interesting, and always obviously. Okay, fair enough, no worries. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're going live most days now, sort of 9:30ish. So anytime, yeah, no worries. That'd be great. Thank you. But I think it's always great to get an insight from people that have kind of already made that transition. Because me and you can sit here all well and good saying, Viva will support you, or you can do this, or it's that simple and everything else. But obviously, as you've mentioned before, it's a huge change just in terms of what they already know. Okay, it all falls under the bracket of farming, but it's a completely different aspect of farming. So not only is it scary in that sense, but it's a big risk for them financially and in terms of everything else. So I think when you've got someone that's already kind of made those changes, it does carry a lot more weight, in the same that Howard Brown does.
And Declan Bowens, don't forget.
Yeah, Declan again, exactly. When you've got someone that's seen both sides of it, not just for the conversations with other people, but obviously with other farmers too.
Somebody's talking about that issue that we were talking about, the fact that they want real meat and not vegan meat.
Oh, right, okay.
I mean, normally they talk about chemicals, don't they? And yet,
that's normally the suggestion, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
But I mean that Branston yesterday made a really good point there. Like processed food. If we look at it in a technical term, there's very few things that aren't processed anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, even if you look at something as simple as flat pack furniture from IKEA, it's all processed. It's processed and packaged and distributed to you. So yeah.
How about this? According to a Nestle professional, which is obviously not one of our kind of spokespeople, the plant-based meats.
What does that mean? Nestle professional?
I don't know. Somebody works for Nestle.
Someone that works for Nestle, right? Okay.
Yeah. The plant-based meats on the market are most commonly made from soy, peas, beans, mushrooms, mung beans, and vital wheat gluten, otherwise known as seitan.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're usually a mix of those proteins, may include natural pigments to make the flesh look a bit redder or browner.
Quite a lot of the sort of burgery type replacements now, they're all pea protein, yeah.
Yeah. It's funny though, I suppose even from my point of view, pea protein kind of sounds a bit weird, I think. Yeah. But I mean,
what do you mean it sounds worse than pea milk?
No, it's just that I noticed that well, in Ireland, right, in Aldi, they've got, you know, burger this and burger that and everything, whereas in Lidl they have pea burgers and that kind of stuff, right? And I was thinking in terms of the aesthetics of the name,
yeah, pea doesn't sound great, does it?
No.
I mean, and I think it's the same when you go through some of these other things. You can see that the names, you know, and a lot of it, I suppose, is just because it's new as well. But I can remember seeing an argument once where someone was saying that none of the plant-based milk should be allowed to be called milk. They should be called juice. And I was like, yeah, can you imagine trying to promote nut juice? Like, just not gonna sell.
Well, says no woman ever. Spider-Man. Yeah, vegan meat is vile. I can't stand it. Now, I mean, I got to be honest with you. I don't think you've probably tried any of it. But the point is, in terms of the research, they've done all these blind tests and that kind of stuff. A lot of people, including people in the flesh industry, they can't tell the difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
don't know so much of some of the newer stuff because more recently I haven't caught up with a lot of the newer products that have come out. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that there aren't things in the past that I've brought and tried and didn't like and never bought again. But that used to happen before I was vegan as well. Sometimes people buy me a jumper for Christmas that's totally vegan. There's no problem there, but the style of it is something that I'll never wear, so I end up taking it back.
Yeah, well, a lot of people say that about vegan cheese, but there's a lot of people who kind of get a piece of cheese from the shelf and they don't like it, and so in the end they end up with their favorites, which is interesting from a vegan point of view.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point actually. If you think of how many, especially like come Christmas time, how many dairy-based cheeses there actually are available in terms of different flavors, different shapes, different sizes, different colors, and the vast majority of people stick to what they like. And for a lot of people, that's just cheddar. They're not even willing to sort of like move out of that box. So yeah, it's interesting to think that although people moan about a lack of choice, most people limit their own choices every single day anyway, or they try things for the first time at someone else's suggestion.
Well, we're back to that problem that people are conservative. Sociologically, people are conservative about food. But when people came up to the stall in Dublin, this is the vegetarians now. And they would take a sample of the vegan cheese and they go, I didn't even know there was a vegan, there was such thing as a vegan cheese.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, you must have seen it in the supermarkets. No. And so that goes to indicate that what they do when they're in the supermarket, they go straight for the cheese that they know and like.
Well, yeah.
And it's as though everything else is out of focus.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree,
Yeah.
Or the other thing that you sometimes find when it comes to the plant-based cheeses is that, especially if you're speaking to a vegetarian, they have tried one once in like
Oh yeah,
2005.
15 years ago.
Yeah, and it was absolutely terrible, which I completely probably agree was, because the first cheeses that I tasted were absolutely hideous. And that's it. I know what they tasted like 10 years ago, and therefore it couldn't have possibly adapted in that time.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, because Ronnie and I have been doing it for so long, we've found the vegan cheeses all right.
Yeah.
And everybody's going, oh, they were horrible
I
back then.
suppose
And
from
they were
your
talking
point
about
of
20
view,
years ago.
yeah, from your point of view, it's like it's almost like a much longer version of mine. So like in terms of the cheese, initially, yeah, I absolutely agree. Some of them were disgusting, and then there was a couple. I think the one of the first Violife ones wasn't too bad, and I didn't mind that. And then there was Daya for a little bit that wasn't too bad. But it's almost like kind of like your first beer. You don't really like them, but you want to like them, so you continue to keep using them. And then whereas now there's actually a couple of brands where I'm like, that's actually really nice. And I suppose you've had that progress as well, where it started off absolutely dreadful and it's only got better. Whereas I suppose a lot of the people that would make that change tomorrow are going to be like, I don't like the taste of this. Whereas that's our best version and they don't like it. They haven't
Well,
had
you know, that's not entirely true, because I think I was much more tolerant of the differences, or the differences in taste and everything. My overriding thought always was, well, I'm not killing anyone. And so that therefore psychologically changed it.
Yeah.
So even though, you know, if you were to envisage, you know, one thing on the shelf and another, the thing that might taste worse was ethically better, and so therefore became better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, fundamentally, that's what this is about. We're just lucky that there are so many different options of so many different things now, because even if it was a case where all of these things weren't available and they were disgusting and they were detrimental and all these other things, it would still be the right thing to do.
Yeah, actually, you know, it makes you wonder, because say for example, the internet existed in 1982, 1983, when there was hardly anything, and it was, in most people's eyes, not that great. But I mean, like, this is 2023 now.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like, everything has changed radically. Plus the fact, well, you see, the thing is, people won't put themselves out in this sense. But what it basically means is, as the vegan market increases, there's going to be a lot more R&D. And so that means that any kind of issues will be dealt with until the product is just about the same or even better. It's to do with the size of the market. It's just that what you need then is for people to put themselves out a little bit at the beginning in order to create that market.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that people won't do.
No, well, and you can sort of understand to some degree, I suppose.
I think so, yeah, I think so, yeah. You know, people like what they know, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And I mean, even though I've made the point loads of times that there's tons and tons and tons of videos and blah, 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 and recipes that you can go and learn from, if they don't do that with any of their other aspect of cooking, like before that, they were never reading recipes and they didn't read cookbooks and they just did it, then there'd be that reluctance anyway. It's not normal for them. Why should they put this extra effort in, so to speak? So there's all these different factors that play into it. But this is probably the most we've ever spoken about food ever, in the most positive way.
Yeah, let's not talk about food. Let's talk about justice, non-violence, peace, and the beginning of the social movement, which everybody's waiting with bated breath for us to do.
No, I know. Like, best part of half an hour before we actually said anything. That's really impressive.
I know, yeah, we're terrible, aren't we?
But hopefully, just because obviously normally we don't normally touch on food all that much, but hopefully those people that are really like foodie and really keen on that, and that's their kind of, thing here that they can't see past or whatever. There are millions and millions of people out there that will help you do the food. Like that is something we have an absolute abundance of. It really is. And you'll find someone that you can relate to, you find funny or whatever. There are so many different creators or people make it. They're not even necessarily vegan people, just people putting out plant-based recipes now because it's popular. So like when it comes to food, I just think it's very easy for people to find that information without even trying. Just scrolling through TikTok, you'd find video after video. Well, you don't get that with anything else, really, do you?
No.
Oh, I have a guest request.
Quite interesting, actually. If you Google or search, what is vegan meat made of, there's loads and loads of answers. So it must be a question that gets asked a lot, because I do know that on the lives that we do, most people just assume it's kind of just chemicals, right? Which is not true.
Yeah, and I suppose the other thing we have to factor in is that a lot of these companies are learning this information or doing this for the first time. And so this will probably be an ongoing progress thing where recipes will be perfected and then cheaper ingredients will be sourced and all that kind of thing. So they'll probably change as time goes on.
Yeah, this is another one where it's saying soya, wheat gluten, mushrooms, pea protein. I mean, there's no chemicals here. And yet we get that all the time. It's chemicals, or it's just full of chemicals. It's just processed chemicals.
Yeah. Hello, Miss Parliament. Welcome.
Hello. So you guys talking a bit about chemicals and preservatives in food and stuff.
Yeah, so we was just finishing the thread of that conversation, because it's something that we have alleged quite often, that obviously all plant-based foods are just full of chemicals. But I mean, if we looked at the back of a packet of, say, something like super noodles, most people couldn't tell me what any of those ingredients mean. They're just names. They're just words. They just don't. It's just deflection.
Yeah, I came on because it says be radical, be vegan. Personally, I don't ever see myself being vegan. Not in this lifetime.
Not in this lifetime?
Yeah.
Is there any particular reason for that, or?
I mean, I'm pescatarian.
Okay.
But not necessarily because I care so much about animals. It's because I grew up and I watched documentaries of like animals being slaughtered, and I just find meat kind of gross. And like people might not like cheese. I don't like meat, for example. Like you were talking about processed food. I just ate literally like the vegan chicken like not that long ago, like 10 minutes ago. But I would never. I love seafood. I love everything. I love milk. I love cheese. I don't see myself becoming vegan. I tried for like a week, but again, like you said, you believe that the cost. I was listening in a little bit. You said the cost might go down in the future, but right now, being a vegan, it's not really expensive, but it's not like super cheap. And I understand why like the companies are trying to pump us with chemicals and stuff. But again, I feel like for most people, it's not a viable option to be vegan when they've got families to feed.
Stick to the like. Just for example, if you stick for the like, so you went and bought like Beyond Burgers for 2 nights a week, I would totally agree with you. It's getting on those sort of prices.
Yeah, but the Beyond Burger thing is getting a bit old hat now. The Beyond Burger is starting to fail as a company because you've got people like Aldi making just as good burgers, but for far
cheaper price, yeah. But even if you went on that and you went with all the branded stuff, then yeah, absolutely, it's very expensive. But if you stuck to kind of a plain whole foods diet, then it's actually the cheapest way to live. I mean, the reason that aid relief charities, for example, if there was like an earthquake somewhere, the reason that they give them plant-based food is because it's cheap and it lasts so long. You don't necessarily have to refrigerate it or keep it in any special conditions. So actually, in terms of that, there's a reason that it's known as the welfare diet, because in terms of price, if you stick to whole foods, it's exceptionally cheap. Things like pasta, rice, lentils, legumes, nuts, these are like the cheapest products that you can buy. It's only when you start looking at the like-for-like products or meat replacements or expensive things that your bills are going to see surge up. But that would be the same, I suppose, you look at the price of, say, like steak and what people will be willing to pay for that. It's all personal preference.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that just all carbs and some proteins though?
So no, I mean, you can get everything from a whole foods diet. I mean, there's a lot of people that in fact are raw vegans, so they only eat raw food. They only eat what they don't have to cook.
I mean, what's your guys'
That's a bit
reason?
too much for me, but because it's a lot of fruit involved, and that's quite expensive. But yeah, there's this. I mean, in terms of health, it's absolutely fine.
So do you believe a vegan diet is healthier than someone who's on a non-vegan diet but tends to eat healthy, I guess? Doesn't eat like burgers
I
every week or
wouldn't want to
something?
get into the health side of the argument because in all honesty, I don't know the facts, but they'd definitely be morally better in the sense that regardless of how healthy either diet was, the vegans, there's no rights violations in it. But in terms of who was healthier, I don't actually know the answer to the question. I wouldn't want to say.
For me, it's like not based on morals, because I don't, like, again, like with meat, I don't like, I believe animals are made for humans to eat personally. And when it comes to the health side, that's why I look at it. But again, I think for example, your family and your mother of like a few kids, like imagine like trying to make vegan lunch like every day. Unless you meal prep, mothers tend to quickly give their children, you know, food and go. And it's, you know, people tend to get the processed stuff, even though it's bad, I guess. People tend to grab what's easiest, most convenient in this modern day and age.
I totally agree, but in that sense, let's just like take that example and just say that, you know, it's too difficult to cook something that make chicken nuggets and chips or fish fingers and chips or any of the other kind of real quick, easy. But those processed foods exist, and the chips are obviously already okay. The beans or whatever you'd add to it would already be okay. Most people are already eating about 70% plant-based meals, and they just add a slab of flesh on it or whatever, and that's the only thing you're actually replacing. I mean, like, say you'd normally have jacket potato and tuna, you just swap it for jacket potato and beans, and the meal takes exactly the same time to prep, to make, to eat, to everything, and there's no rights violations. So, like, it's definitely doable. I understand that certain people, it's not that convenient for them based on how their life's already organised, but it's only a tiny bit of change at the end of the day.
But that example will be cheaper too.
Yeah.
So what do you think about those, you know, you see a lot of bodybuilders nowadays, like when they, what's it called, that word? When they bulk up, they tend to eat a lot of meat, chicken breast, for example. Do you think baked beans or lentils will replace those meats that they use?
Maybe not baked beans, but certainly in terms of other things, yeah, absolutely. I don't know if Plants and Plates is still in here, but he's a perfect example of someone that does just that bulks up and is vegan. So yeah, it's absolutely possible. There are tons and tons of plant-based athletes now. I mean, obviously there's a huge majority of non-plant-based athletes, but that's just the world that we live in. But there are enough now for us to turn around and say, yeah, you can definitely do whatever you want to do physically or athletically and be vegan. Yes.
I mean, I personally believe, like, as long as you're including your veg, your healthy stuff, in non-processed foods, whole foods, and you eat some meat, I think you'd be fine. I honestly don't think anything would be wrong if you ate meat. Even as someone who doesn't eat meat for my own reasons, I think even if you didn't go full plant-based, you'd be fine.
From like the individual's point of view, but obviously from the victims of those choices. And that's essentially who we're speaking about. I mean, from the individual, Mr. Smith may really enjoy eating, I don't know, cow, but the cow doesn't want to go to the slaughterhouse. The cow doesn't want to be reared only to exist to be consumed as food. So if we think about the victims, then there definitely is a problem, and there definitely is a wrong, and that's the wrong.
What free-range farming? Like, you know, those animals are being well looked after, but still end up being slaughtered.
Yeah. It doesn't change the fundamental wrong.
But what's the moral? You know, morals are very subjective, though. Your morals may not align with someone else's morals.
That's very true, but we kind of all know what we would and wouldn't want for ourselves. I mean, let's look at this situation. If we took the situation that was going on at the moment with Israel and Palestine, if all of those women and children were being given a nice place to live and stay with like a swimming pool and a spa and a sauna before they were blown to bits, would it change anything about the situation? No. And that's essentially what we're talking about.
Wait, I just think, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to cut you off, but that is just insane. I don't think you should be using that analogy, using Palestine and Israel to compare animals.
We're talking about better treatment before you're oppressed.
Those are human beings that are literally being blown into bits, and you're talking about, oh, we did this analogy. It's like you just casually mentioned the whole genocide.
We're talking about fellow mammals, though.
Just that's the difference. I'll give you my view. Like, I'm a Muslim, right? So I don't believe that we're mammals.
That's the problem. Well, we are mammals. That's
no, but let me just give my point. So I'm Muslim, right? So I don't believe we're mammals. I think animals and humans are different. The reason I don't care whether an animal gets slaughtered is because we believe Islamically we read our prayer.
But yeah, but you just
there's a certain way we slaughter them. One second. Let me speak. And there's a certain way we slaughter them that they don't feel pain. That's why I don't care when an animal's being slaughtered, because if it's been halal meat, for example, we believe they don't feel pain. So how do you combat people's religious beliefs?
Well, I don't allow things that I can't prove to dictate to me. I mean, a personal belief doesn't go above what I can see with my own eyes.
So why do you get to dictate what
for example, if you watched an animal be slaughtered, would you still have the same opinion that they didn't feel pain, that they were okay with it, they didn't feel anything, they didn't know what was going on? Or
I watched animals being slaughtered.
Easier to believe that because then there's no connection.
Yeah, but you said that's why you were a pescatarian, so it doesn't make sense. You're contradicting yourself now.
So, no, I'm not. I listed my reasons clearly. I said when I was younger, I've seen animals being slaughtered and I watched documentaries. Personally, I don't like the feeling of flesh being in my mouth. Not the fact that I care about the animal's well-being. I just don't. I find it gross, like putting a different body in your mouth. That's what I personally. I like someone who doesn't like cheese finds it gross. It comes from a cow, for example. Like we all have our reasons, but
You
it's
said
not
at
necessarily
first
for
that
the
you
welfare of
found
the
the
animal.
slaughter gross, didn't you?
Pardon?
You said that you found the videos of the slaughter gross to see it.
I watched animals being slaughtered. We had like a whole farm in the country when I went back home, but I've seen them be slaughtered. I just find eating the flesh of something that has veins and blood and skin. I find it gross myself. That's why I don't put it in my body. But I don't care if other people do it.
Crabs. That doesn't make any sense to me because what you've just listed, fish have, crabs have, sea life has.
No, that's me. That's me. That's a weird one. That's why I don't know why I can look at seafood and be fine with it. But with me, I'm not. I think it's person's preference. At the end of the day, it doesn't have to necessarily be with my morals. Just what I found good enough for me to eat. I find meat not good enough for me to eat for my own reasons, but not for the exact reasons that you guys don't eat meat. I don't think about the welfare of the animal. I think about do I want that?
So your position is essentially religious, because you did say that they were made to be eaten. I think you said so.
Yeah, they were made to be
not
eaten.
not by
Like,
farmers,
we
but by
don't have
God.
to
You're
eat
saying,
meat,
is it?
but we do believe that they are made for us to be eaten.
But by who?
By my God, but again, you don't have to believe in my God, and like I don't have to believe in your, your sense of reality when it comes to veganism.
Okay, which one is your God?
Allah, that's my God.
Who says that you should be here to protect the animals?
Who?
You should be a caretaker to the animals.
Yeah, look after the animals, treat them justly, but then also
before you oppress and murder them. Yeah, right. Makes sense.
Has your God got the Ten Commandments?
We don't believe in abusing animals, but we believe there's a special prayer that you pray and then you slaughter them a certain way that they don't feel the least amount of pain.
Is your God one of those gods that have got 10 Commandments?
No, that's Jewish.
Oh, that's Yahweh.
Well, the 10 Commandments is more than just Jewish, isn't it? I mean, like, Protestants.
No, we don't have 10 Commandments. Definitely not.
You don't have any moral rules in your religion?
Yeah, we do.
Is one of them thou shalt not kill?
Thou shalt kill not what? You're reading Bible verses now.
Well, I'm just interested because I'm always interested in that thing in the Bible.
I don't know the exact source, but I have read it before because I obviously have read the Quran, but it talks about animals and the way we should slaughter them and their meaning. So we don't necessarily believe like animals should not be slaughtered. We believe in looking after them. Like obviously don't beat your animal, don't abuse it, whatever it is. But like obviously when you want to eat an animal, you're free to eat it because God has put them on the planet for you to eat, the ones that He's made permissible to eat. For example.
Did he say you have to?
No, you don't have to.
No, okay. So that makes it a moral issue again then, doesn't it?
How?
Well, because you don't have to.
Yeah, it's not mandated. So therefore
it's not mandated.
It returns it to a moral issue then, isn't it?
For who?
For the individual.
No, can you explain into it? You're saying it's a moral issue, but you're not really going to how it's a moral issue.
If it's not mandated, then that means you're making the choice. It's left upon you to make that decision.
Yeah, but so it's also not mandated. That's not
authority to do something. That's like, well, hopefully you make the right decision, and most people aren't.
Okay, so it's not mandated, but there are guidelines on how you should do it if you do choose to eat meat.
Yeah, choose to eat meat. That's what Andy just said.
There's always a choice of what you put in your mouth. But again, certain animals for us are not permissible to eat, and again, some are permissible. We just follow the guidelines that God's given us. So if you do want to eat meat, there's guidelines on how you should eat the meat and where it should come from. Therefore, we only eat halal meat because we believe that it has the least pain in the animal. There's prayer being over it. But again, we don't eat certain meats that aren't halal. For example, we're not going to go down to my local Mackey's and get a burger.
You're saying that if you decide to eat flesh, then you've got rules about it. But
yeah.
but that's after you've decided. You don't have you're not mandated to do it. That's what Andy was saying.
Yeah, what about it? It's free will, right? You live in the 21st century. You can do whatever you want. If you want to eat meat, go ahead. If you don't, then don't.
And I'm not necessarily disagreeing that. From our position, it would just be a case of the victims that we're talking about. They also have that entitlement to free will, to survive, to exist, to not be bred into existence, just to be slaughtered. So it
I mean,
just
for example,
extends
the
a little bit further.
farmers. I mean, even if people did turn vegan, animals still will be slaughtered all around the world.
Well, not if the whole world was vegan, but obviously, yeah, as that transition is happening, of course, yeah, because that's the way the world is at the moment. It doesn't mean that that's the way the world has to always be, though.
Yeah, but you can't. It's like me trying to, like, for example, have like.
Sorry, I missed the end of that.
Have they gone?
I'm not sure. And they were speaking, then it just cut off, so I'm not 100% sure.
Galax is saying mammals eat meat like lions eat hyenas. Why can't we? Well, not all mammals eat meat. We are meant to be carnivores. Well, we're not carnivores.
How are you doing? I'm not sure. She's probably got a call or something. But you know, host, I think you made a point earlier about sentience, and sentient creatures. So where do you draw the line on sentience?
Yeah, that is an interesting question. There's a great animal rights philosopher called Tom Reagan, and he wrote The Case for Animal Rights, and he said that you draw it based on what you know in terms of who is sentient, who isn't, and the kind of gray area kind of people. And so he says wherever you draw it in pencil, because when new knowledge comes along, the chances are we're going to have to move the line. And so there's a question of kind of like, we know for certain that there are billions of other animals who are sentient. And then you get into what you might call gray areas. And then there's some suggestion that there's quite a few other animals claimed to be non-sentient, right? The vegan position on the kind of gray areas and the non-sentient or the claimed non-sentient is to give them the benefit of the doubt. So that's how we do it.
Mm-hmm. I think that, like, the more I learn, as an example, about insects, I had a complete, like, distaste for them at one point. I mean, obviously I recognized the contribution to the ecosystem, but in terms of, like, interaction and information, I probably didn't sort of, partake in much study around them. But sort of the more I look into them, and I look at the complex systems that they produce, the efficiency in which they work, and in fact, I would argue, if you were to look at them from a moral perspective, right, they actually seem to be functioning much better than us, especially if we look at things like ant colonies.
I was about to say, actually, if you look at ants from the peripheral, I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah. So it's like for me, I'm sort of, once we remove this kind of, like, special exception that we apply to ourselves, like, what else then are we, like then everything effectively, we use our rationale, etc., but this information is coming up, and it's almost like the line that I sort of accept, like, to me, I would say that now when I look at things, insect cullings or whatever is probably more problematic for the ecosystem than animal culling. In fact, like, there's some literature to suggest that, like, the introduction of animals and turning things into farmland can sometimes be beneficial for the geography of the area.
That it's problematic to cut down rainforests, so we'd agree with that.
Yeah.
But it's not an animal rights position, but we would agree with.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay, so you hold a vegan position because you give animals rights, and then do you so would you say it's something with, like, a distinct nervous system, or a circularity system? Like, what's the appropriate?
Usually that's the criteria that we talk about, having a brain, a nervous system, and kind of like, if you like, the equipment to be self-aware or aware, and perceptually aware. That means that they can feel pain, they can feel joy, but they also express preferences if they've got choices. So those are the kind of areas that we're looking at, and obviously it doesn't apply to trees, for example, but
no, for sure. I mean, I think, again, like, I don't go that far. I mean, I have recognized that, that plants do respond to some sort of stimuli and environmental factors. I wouldn't go so far as to necessarily give them sentience in the way that is observable with others. It's possible that they, like, on some frequency they do something, right? But
Yeah, it is possible that there's a kind of like something that our science is not capable of detecting. That is
of
possible.
measuring, right? Yeah, because it's almost like, the when we sort of scale it up, we have like plants, like ultimately, like they are the sustainers of everything. It's almost like they were created to be consumed by all other living organisms, and it's like, well, that's kind of crazy because they make their own food,
Of
right?
course. And I
And
mean, one of the
it's
things I like to say on these lives is how much genuine research have we done into some of these insects or some of these other smaller creatures, genuinely without some sort of benefit for humanity or without some sort of ulterior motive? Very, very, very limited. So a lot of the stuff that we say we know about this particular insect or that particular animal is a lot of assumption and it's a lot of guesswork anyway. But no, I totally agree with what you're saying.
Mhm, mhm. This is why I struggle with the, like, to take a position. I mean, I would say that, like, on an individual level, I think that there is benefit in a portion of the population being vegan, right? I think that there is definitely some impact that would be seen because I think we do live in a world of consumerism, irrespective of like how we sort of, um, you know, how we sort of look at it, and therein I think lies a significant issue because I think even a lot of vegans would um, have to acknowledge that there were times when, animals and the yield that they provided was the only way to sustain the human tribe at the time, right? And we sort of applied that value judgment there. So it's like it's that kind of thing where I sort of look at it. I'm not necessarily convinced that the whole world going entirely vegan would um, be beneficial to like other parts of the ecosystem that we're just not aware of. I think we might start like I don't know. I see issues with it, to be fair.
Yeah, well, there's certainly going to be, as it were, complications because a vegan world would kind of transform the way that we do things and also the way that we think about things. And again, going back to Tom Reagan, he always used to argue that what we need to kind of solve the problems that would be created by veganism, if you like, as well as the solutions that come with veganism. What we would need in terms of the problems would be for people of goodwill to come together and to try to work out how to go on. For example, Andy would be talking about vertical farming a lot. So that's the kind of technology now that she's really taking off. So if people came
Yeah,
together,
imagine if we had some commissions that could get together, some sort of like community-based commissions that
yeah,
got
but
together
also
to
a
discuss
government who would
things.
fund it.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Sorry. Sorry. How do I address you, vegan animal rights activist? Oh, Roger. Is Roger okay?
Yeah, it's my name.
Okay, cool.
And
Yeah.
any swear word will do with me, don't worry.
No, I got you. So Roger, like in terms of the thing that you just said, the solution that was presented, like vertical farming. So what would be the main differences between that and traditional farming methods, and like what would be the, I guess, like, is it going to be something that would be legally enforced? Or is it a principle or a framework that you follow? Like what kind
No,
of
it's a choice to be presented to farmers. But in terms of benefits, you've got efficiency. You get around the weather problems. You get around the crop deaths issue. So in other words, the so-called pests, so we're back to the insects,
Mhm.
are kind of because it's an enclosed system. So
Okay.
there are some real kind of benefits to that system from a vegan point of view,
Mhm.
and also
What about
from
what about the
things like,
company? Yeah, sorry.
well, some farmers say, well, our land is not good enough for X, Y, and Z, whereas vertical
No,
farming,
I was more thinking about like poorer countries where
yeah,
they are often already exploited for their produce, right? As a result
yes,
of economic hitmen or whatever the case may be. They're genuinely trying to you know provide some sort of value to the world in some way, shape, or form.
hmm
Um, if they are unable to invest or have that investment or access to that investment, or companies aren't willing to invest in those kind of countries, then I think again, like it would just come on. I feel like it might come unstuck if the technology is expensive or kept in some way.
What some vegans would say to that point is the fact that but that brings in a critique of things like capitalism, global inequality, economic inequality, power relations between countries, all of that. We would think critically about all of that as vegans.
And also we'd have to factor in, like, let's just say hypothetically we were now at 30% of the world was vegan. That would potentially mean another 25% of the land that was currently being used, and everything else would be potentially at least somewhat reduced. So some of these countries that already grow a lot of produce but don't actually get to consume any of it within that country suddenly would be able to. But absolutely, it would be one of those things that without support, financial aid, that a lot of these other countries would get left behind. For a while it would be very expensive technology.
I mean, we just exploit those countries in all kinds of ways.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the thing, like, if there was the vegan mentality, that would be the first thing that need to change, because otherwise it wouldn't matter what was put in place. Let's just say we had an infinite budget, right? Someone wrote us a check that was kind of limitless, and we turned around to a lot of third world countries and said, here you go, here's all the equipment you need to start vertically farming. Until we change the policies and the governments and the corruption that exists within all those countries, they'd still continue to get exploited. Nothing to change.
Do you know then, host? Then it becomes really intersectional, and then at that point, like, it becomes difficult to sort of champion your efforts in a kind of like productive manner. This is I guess it's almost like the idea is like really good, and I actually appreciate that Roger, you came out with solutions, and host, you've got like a sentiment that is like, again, productive, because oftentimes when we have these conversations, it becomes very, very reductive, where it becomes like a slinging match between like two opposing parties, right? Whereas we're really the kind of truth is somewhere in between, and it's like, I'd like to actually completely understand the message. And I've tried conversing with some vegans before, and it's been very difficult. Maybe it was me, I don't know, but it inevitably ended up in some form of conversation. But I'm not vegan, but if it's okay, I'd like to drop you both a follow. And
absolutely. I think probably just sort of touching on what Roger said, Ari, like the Tom Reagan drawing a line in pencil. I think from a vegan position, we would look at some of these potential problems in the future as a challenge for veganism. They're not like, oh, well, we better quit because there's a problem. It's like, yeah, well, we know there are going to be problems. It's an entire world change, really, and a change in mentality and philosophy of the world. So we envisage there's going to be significant kind of roadblocks, but at the same time, they're a challenge for veganism, and it would be for people to collectively come together and say, right, we've always done it this way, and we either no longer can, or morally it's no longer just. So what can we do instead?
Yeah, I mean, the first vegan question should always be, is this just? Not, is this profitable or anything like that? Is this just? And as Donald Watson, who's the best known of the co-founder of the vegan social movement in 1944, he said that veganism was about opposing the exploitation of sentient life, right? Which is written at the bottom of the screen there. And so that's our first question. Is this going to exploit someone else? And if so...
Right. It would include humans, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. I appreciate the... I appreciate that position, actually. I do think it is, like, I would say, a noble thing in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's pragmatic.
Do you mean utopian? Is that what you're trying to get at?
I think. Well, I'll put it this way. I think the values are, if we, in that principle, just like as a foundational principle, is fantastic. The problem is that life is that much more nuanced, and the more life there is, the more nuanced it becomes, right? And it's interesting that kind of becomes that sort of almost central question around veganism.
Well, I agree with that. Going back to my language about utopia, veganism is a utopian idea. When the vegan movement was started, it was started in the last years of the Second World War, and so they saw veganism as part of the peace movement. And they also saw, and I think you'll really be interested in this, they saw veganism as part and parcel of the moral evolution of humanity. So in other words, vegan values injected into the world, as it were, I know that sounds a bit grand, would mean that we were a better species. Does that make sense?
I mean, sure. I mean, I think the only sort of, I guess, sort of like, not, it's not a critique, but it's sort of an observation, is that throughout history, like there have been other cultures, religions, groups of people who believed in like a different type of unity within existence, and
Yeah.
you know, would, for all intents and purposes, like do what is necessary and nothing more, right? So like again, like I understand that portion of it. I think what I'm saying is utopian is kind of maybe the right word. But in the same way that I would say that you know, communism is kind of like utopian, right? Again, and I'm not a significant academic on communism or anything like that. You know, but it's in my layman's understanding, my bite-sized sort of position. I've not been convinced that it isn't anything, you know, not utopian, if that makes sense. So. Yeah, it maybe it does sit under that a little bit, but a more pragmatic approach is definitely something I'm interested in learning more about for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that when you got a utopian vision of kind of like peace on earth, I mean, it sounds almost like
Right.
miscongeniality at this stage. But what you know, when you've got that, then you've got, okay, well, you know, given the fact that we've got a capitalist system, the capitalist system is based on profit and it's about exploitation and you know, kind of you know, kind of you know, cash books and you know who's making the most profit and who can get one over on the other and everything. We've got a long way to go to bring about a world which would reflect vegan values. Now we understand that. It's just that, like, what can we do? I mean, like, they are our values. We have to talk about
champion
values,
them.
I suppose.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, I understand. I appreciate the conversation genuinely. It's been really informative. I like that there's a pragmatic side to it, as opposed to just sort of blind activism and some sort of like, you know, real. It's like an emphatic feeling where rather than a measured approach. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like, I do acknowledge myself. I mean, I've been vegan for 44 years, coming up to 45 now in January. But there is a generational gap in the vegan movement, and it could well be that you've encountered, you know, kind of newer vegans who are much more kind of strident about their position, but it's not as intersectional. I mean, you use that phrase as other people would see, probably not as left-leaning in politics as it used to be either. So there are some shifts. But if you
I think it's been adopted by both the left and the right. I think there have been people who would consider themselves to be like right-wing, or not even right-wing, but, you know, sort of, you know, as the opposite to the left a little bit.
How does that work? How do people with right-wing values fit it with vegan values?
I think some of them present things like some sort of extension of property rights. I'm not sure, or the application that they give to the pro-life position.
Yeah.
I think they use a similar ethical framework to come to their position. But then again, like, there's also real significant issues with their ethical framework as well, where they believe not all of them, I'm not trying to misrepresent anybody, but there are some people, when it comes to sort of property rights perspectives, they believe that you know, a dead person doesn't have any, and therefore, as an example, their organs could, in theory, be harvested without consent. And I find that to be distasteful, you know, without going into like an ethical argument for or against it. So
yeah, well, we had a guest the other day, Andy, didn't we? Where, I mean, they were talking about property rights, but as a way of dismissing veganism.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, I got you. It's interesting. It's interesting, like how people present arguments, right? Like I've heard different things, and that's why I like these kind of conversations where, you know, there is more of an understanding of like, what is the actual topic? Like, what's the point of this? What are we trying to ascertain here? And how do we get more people who are able to understand like the impact in holistically, right? How do we get them to respond to a message? Because the ones who are fervent like believers either which way, they're not going to move, right? It's about the people in between, right? And that's where sort of, I guess, the interest lies for me.
Yeah, well, it's been great to talk to you, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't very often get to say this to people, but I think you'd be very interested in the writings of a man called Leslie Cross.
Okay.
It's a simple Google search. That's Leslie with an IE as opposed to the Y. Probably the first result will be a webpage called Candid Hominid. I really think that you'd enjoy reading his essays, and it will teach you quite a bit about what you're actually interested in learning.
Okay, fair enough. I appreciate that. Leslie Cross, right?
Leslie
I'll have a
Cross.
look.
I'll type it in the chat so that you can see it.
Sure, I appreciate that. Well, just look, one disclaimer, there are times when I'm not as calm and collected as I am here. Like there are times when I, because I hold my own lives, I do debates and things, and sometimes I create rage bait lives or characters or whatever the case may be. So don't judge me later on if you see me.
You don't
crazy.
seem to have the voice for that, though, funny enough.
No. I mean, I have some crazy characters. I want.
No, to be fair, that sounds quite interesting. I might have to give me a follow, and I'll follow back, and I'll have to check this.
Yeah. All right, cool. All right. Well, look, thanks a lot for your time, everyone. I appreciate
thank you for joining us. Much appreciated.
No worries. Take care. Take care. Bye, Roger. Bye.
Bye now.
It's very interesting. All right, we got another guest straight away because, sorry, Connor's been waiting quite a while. Apologies. I just wanted to keep that conversation on the lines it was. It was interesting.
Oh.
No, you're right. Yeah, thank you for your patience. I know you've been waiting a while.
Oh, that's fine. I don't know if you could hear me or not. So
yeah, I can hear you now.
What do you think about the part of farming that's abuse to the animals?
Personally, I wouldn't necessarily describe it in those terms, because I'm more than happy and willing to believe that in the eyes, certainly of the farmers, that never happens in their care.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's a rights violation. Their whole existence, where they get sent to from the moment they leave you, that's all a rights violation. So even if I could extend the highest benefit of the doubt in terms of abuse or cruelty, it wouldn't change the fundamental wrong.
What do you mean by where they're sent to after they leave us?
Well, I'm assuming you don't slaughter your own animals.
Sorry?
I'm assuming you don't slaughter your own animals.
We do sometimes. It depends.
Okay. What would be the difference in circumstances?
Like, it's sort of the same. So it's just like a little machine, and it just hits them on the head. No pain or anything. Like, they don't feel it. Like, there's no pain going through them at all. It's like they're alive and then bang. They don't even realise it. Like, there's no pain, no cruelty going on through it.
And I mean, and like I said, even if I can accept that on that terms, that it's 100% successful, there's no pain and everything's hunky dory. It's still a rights violation. We still don't have the right to breed and exploit others.
Our position is not based on cruelty or abuse. It's based on rights violations.
Like, for thousands, like the ancient Egyptians came up with farming, and ever since then we've been farming plants and animals and everything to sustain the society. So, like, cows.
It's about time we changed.
Like cows, chickens, all that, they've been raised to be eaten, like, and
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, and genetic.
But we're asking moral questions about that, you see.
Oh yeah, no, I understand that.
But yeah.
But like, to say families with lower incomes, oftentimes meat is the best source of protein, iron, zinc, all those key nutrients that people need to sustain themselves.
Well, there are several nutritionists who would argue with that, but I mean, we're not nutritionists, you know, so.
No, and there would obviously be the counter argument of how much needs to go in to create one individual animal, despite what their then outlay may be, and is that efficient and productive? But yeah, I mean, from a moral point of view, that wouldn't change anything for us. It would be. I mean, one thing I always want to make clear is our position here, and our sort of like I don't know, way of thinking isn't to make sure that all farmers go out of business or that people can't feed their children or anything like that. It's to find new ways of farming so that you still get to make your money, everybody still gets to eat their dinner, but no rights are violated.
I don't understand what you mean violating the rights of the animal. Like, I don't understand that.
So essentially, their right to exist without being, for want of a better word, livestock.
Say if they were out in the wild, it'd be even worse because then they'd have to be worrying about predators going after them, and then they have to be looking over their shoulder constantly. But when they're in a field on their own, munching away on grass, like, they're happy out. There's not a care in the world, and every now and again they have to go in, get milked, they're let out again, and they're happy out.
Well, personally, I think that's a pretty simplistic way of looking at an ecosystem, because in terms of herbivores, it's not as though all herbivores, like cows, are in a constant state of terror.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, I know we don't have a huge population of free-living cows in the United Kingdom, but who are their threats besides, say, unruly dogs?
Well, in the UK, there's none, but say in America, you'd have bears and all that other stuff. So, and even like a couple of 100 years ago in the UK, you would have had bears and wolves and everything.
Yeah. Once upon a time, but obviously now, even that in the UK doesn't exist. I mean, is there? I can't imagine there's many cases of a fox who I can't think of anyone other than a dog really that could potentially take on a cow.
Well, the biggest threat to cows are human beings.
Of course. I was purposely excluding those. Yeah, I was trying to think in terms of a natural predator, in terms of,
Oh, yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, often cases, like, there've been foxes out in the field running after the cows, just like biting at their ankles, and I don't know what they're trying to do, because obviously a fox isn't killing a cow, but just terrorizing it, or even a mink will be out there terrorizing cows. And crows with lambs. Lambs, if they're out in the field and they're not by their mother, crows will come down and rip the eyes out of a lamb's head. I've seen it happen myself before.
Yeah, which is a good reason to keep them with their mothers, though, isn't it?
Oh no, like, they're in the same, like, sheep are often kept together with the mothers and the children. So then they can all get sheared at once and let back out again. Yeah. Obviously, we only shear them in the summer because then you don't want them being cold and getting pneumonia or anything like that. So only shear them in the summer when it's warm. But like, lambs are often kept with their mothers, so then stuff like that doesn't happen. Like, we try to prevent stuff like that as much as possible.
I mean, exactly what you're saying now is why I'm more than happy to extend the benefit of the doubt that the words abuse, cruelty, whatever, don't necessarily come into play, especially from your point of view. I mean, there might be some arguments from vegan definitions of those words, but I'd be more than happy to extend that benefit of the doubt and still say...
Yeah, you care about their welfare, that's what you're
absolutely.
saying.
Oh, yeah, because you don't be putting money, time, effort, and love into an animal, and then it just to be pretty much just killed. Especially, like, teenagers in the farm industry, they'll often, like, a cow will calve, and then their father or mother or uncle, whoever runs the farm, will give them a calf, and they'll raise it for, like, show or whatever. And, like, say if someone was raising a lamb for show, and after putting all their money, time, and love into that lamb, and then a crow comes along and rips the eye of his head, like, obviously the lamb's in their best interest to keep in good nick, like.
Yeah, the same. I suppose the same being with the mother, I suppose.
Oh yeah. Like, they'll be let out in the field at the same time, then coming up to show time, they'll both be brought in, they'll keep them tidy, they won't let any crows run near them at all.
I suppose we think that if they were free-living beings, they would be their authentic selves. And that's not without risk, of course, but it means that they're not under control of humans. They're not ear tagged. They're not whatever the procedures that they go through. They're not dehorned. They're not all that kind of stuff. Pigs are not castrated and all that kind of stuff. So they're not without. They have some dangers as free living beings, but they're living their authentic life. I think that's probably how we would think about it.
So I'm just trying to understand your point. So you just want animals to just be left alone, do their own thing, and just be happy out themselves?
Well, it's more complicated than that because of the fact that we've altered them so much. I mean,
the potential, what we would class as quote unquote farm animals at the moment, are nothing like what they once were. So their ability in the wild would probably be somewhat restricted.
Oh yeah, no.
Especially when if we were talking about chickens, for example, almost impossible for them to just suddenly be released.
Oh yeah, no. I 100% agree with that.
Well, it's interesting though, because Harold Brown, who was a farmer, kind of goes through the species one by one. Who would be viable as free living beings? I mean, cows probably are. In fact, they're.
Yeah, I think cows would probably be the easiest to transition, wouldn't they? Because especially here, because for strikers, like we said, they've got no natural predators, so that would be a massive, significant bonus straight away.
I think pigs might be okay, except for their size. I've been a volunteer at a sanctuary, and as soon as a rescued pig is older than the designated slaughter time of about 6 months.
6 months to a year.
They start to get,
lame. If you see any
heavy,
4, 5, 6
big.
plus pigs in sanctuaries, they usually have real complications moving, don't they? They've got real problems. And
so
they
would suffer.
Yes.
I think that Sandra Higgins of Eden would probably say that that chickens would probably learn or relearn to roost in trees at nighttime and that kind of stuff. So, but it's not without danger. But then again, we're a danger. So it's not as though we're kind of going, okay, we're eliminating a danger. I mean, it's like we're eliminating a danger until we send them to a slaughterhouse.
Yeah, I mean that's it. Every time that we leave the house, a potential of danger faces us, doesn't it? Especially if we drive a car or any of those things. There's tons and tons and tons of dangers around. We don't use it as a justification to all remain indoors or any of those things.
Or in prison.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. Like, obviously, I do not like factory farming or anything. I just felt
I think that's quite clear. I mean, the fact that you've talked about your animals going outside is a pretty distinct difference. But no, that's why I'm more than happy to extend the sort of benefit of the doubt and say, look,
we're not going to call you an abuser, and we're not going to call you
exactly that.
Yeah, I think those words are just used too interchangeably. Like, they've kind of lost their meaning in context.
Yeah, whilst you're on, an interesting question: what would, in your mind, define as cruelty?
Oh, like if you're, say if you have a horse and you're not cleaning out the stable every day, or you just have a normal farm and you're beating the animals, like not a tap or anything to get them to move along, like properly beating them to get them to move along, that's wrong. Like, you should be put in prison for that straight away.
Yeah, and I would say what you've just described is how the vast majority of the people define cruelty too. That's why I don't like to use that word at all, because we have very different sort of meanings of it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no.
Because obviously, from say a vegan perspective, when we're talking about things like castration or dehorning or anything like that, obviously all of those fall into the realms of cruelty as well, and that's what people get hung up on. Whereas, as we said, like, I don't like to talk about those things because it misses the actual fundamental wrong. It misses the key issue.
No, dehorning, I've dehorned cows and goats and everything myself. It's not a pretty process. But
I'm assuming that you wouldn't class that as a cruel act. It would be classed as, say, a necessary act, right?
Yeah, because say if you're out in the field and you're bringing the cows in for milking, or you're bringing them in for the winter or whatever, you don't really want a 500 kilo bull going full pelt at you with horns.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've made this point quite a few times that a lot of the animal welfare legislation that exists, certainly in the UK and probably the world over, doesn't just exist to potentially keep the other animals, like the other cows, safe. It's a big part of it is to keep the individuals safe, like yourself or any other workers. Yeah, of course.
And like people who be crossing through fields as well, that's even worse, because they know, most of them don't know anything about animals, and if they see a bull with horns, that's going to just make it way worse, because the bull's already going to mess them up anyway. but if it has horns, they're going to die. Like, so I think dehorning is an essential process of bringing up an animal.
Yeah, which would come back to our argument of like the fundamental wrong is that we don't have the right to do any of those things. So all of those things that potentially other vegans might talk about and say it's abuse and it's cruelty, those are all just kind of symptoms of the problem. Whereas obviously we just go back down to the core and just say, look, we personally don't think that this is the right thing to do.
Yeah, which is why Andy keeps saying the words "the fundamental wrong."
Oh, you know, I understand your point where it's like we shouldn't be at them at all, and they should just be allowed to do their own thing and be out in the wild and all that.
Well, I mean, it's interesting that you say allowed as well. You see, the thing is, it's because of what you do and what our position is, we wouldn't even use the same language as you. And I'm not having a go. I'm just saying that we wouldn't say, oh, that other animal should be allowed. We would talk about their rights and their situation, but like we wouldn't see ourselves as controllers of them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that was probably a poor choice of words.
I'm just saying it's your choice of words because it's kind of your industry words, so it's not a problem.
It's normalization, isn't it? But yeah, I think the easiest way of looking at it from our point of view is a lot of people think that we're asking for everyone to give something, like we're asking for the animals to be given their freedom, but essentially it's us to stop taking it away, us to stop taking what was never ours to begin with. We don't need to give them anything, we need to stop taking from them.
Obviously, like, because you're vegan, you don't like animals being killed or anything like that. But, like, I'm going to assume that you eat avocados because loads of people love avocados.
I don't.
No.
Oh, well, maybe not you, but other vegans love avocados.
I mean that they are a common part, but I mean also Mexico loves avocados. I think the number one use of avocado on the planet is for guacamole.
Yeah, but, like, avocado farmers will kill thousands and thousands, if not millions of bees a month, which are the most essential thing on this earth to keep it going, because without...
But it's not a vegan crop though.
Yeah, I mean literally thinking back to the things that we've just said, does that sound like something we would be in support of?
Oh no, I know that, but I'm just saying, like, for vegans who do eat avocados, like, they...
Well, some of them claim, and I don't know whether this is true or not, but I mean, I know that somebody from a national group went on the Piers Morgan show, and she said that they make sure they get avocados from Europe, from Spain, to get around that problem.
Yeah, the same thing is still happening there, though.
The other thing that gets forgotten about the avocado discussion is that a big thing that happens with the avocado farms is that the honey farmers set up next to them because of all the bees. So that's actually the main reason that the bees are killed. So, I mean, the issue that we're looking at is that the native bees are being killed by these honeybees that are on these honey farms.
When you say native bees, are you saying bumblebees? Yes,
or obviously in different countries, I'm not 100% sure if they are always bumblebees. Okay. But the other pollinators are being killed for the most part by these honeybees who deliberately set up next to the avocado farms to take advantage of the fact that there are all the plants there. Yeah, because avocados, really bloom hundreds and hundreds of flowers, which obviously the bees are hugely attracted to.
Oh no, yeah,
So again, as a vegan, we fundamentally oppose honey for the same reasons. So the issue would be that would resolve a lot of these problems would be let's stop the honey industry first, and then we'll look at the avocado industry afterwards. But I mean, a big part of the avocado industry, like I said, is nothing to do with vegans. If everyone stopped being vegan tomorrow, the avocado sales would drop minute amounts. It wouldn't affect business.
I wouldn't say they drop minute amounts. I'd say they drop a good bit. Like maybe 10%.
And Dana is saying Mexican avocados do not use honeybees. I mean, it's not really a big issue for me because I'm not bothered about.
No, the avocado farms don't use the honeybees. The honey farms set up next to them, so the honeybees
that goes killing the native.
What's already happening.
See, the problem is if there's a moral problem about things, we would try to come up with a solution, including avocados, almonds, and then, you know, as people have been saying in the chat, crop deaths in general. I mean, we don't want any of these.
No, absolutely. I mean, going back to our previous caller, it'd be looking at something like, if everyone desperately still wants to have avocados, how can we get them without these rights violations or without these other problems?
And if we can't, we won't bother with them.
Yeah, exactly that. If we couldn't achieve it through something like vertical farming or some other method, then we'd have to just get rid of avocados at the end of the day. That would be the vegan way of thinking. It would be not a case of we'll come to a compromise and just make sure that only a few bees die. It'd be a case of, if we can't find a way around this, see you later.
Yeah, it's almost like people like Piers Morgan almost infer that vegans can't live without avocados.
Yeah, I saw that clip. That was a bit stupid of him.
Well, it's the same argument he seems to make with everyone that goes on there that's vegan, doesn't he?
Yeah, no, the clips of him arguing with vegans are funny, I will say that.
We've got another guest, so we'll set them. But yeah, I mean, just going back to what I was kind of saying. So, like, from the vegan position, we'd be looking at having communication and dialogue with people like yourself to try and transition so that you would still be a farmer, but instead of farming other beings in terms of cows, whomever, it would be plants instead. And there would be the support there to make sure that you didn't go without, that your family wasn't threatened, or any of these other things that obviously nobody wants for you. That's not our position at all. I think there's a big misnomer that, like, vegans want all farmers out of business or any of that stuff. Whereas, at least from our point of view, it's kind of the opposite of that. The people that have got this knowledge for the most part, or have got this information, or even the space to make these changes happen, those are still the future.
Yeah, somebody wrote in the comment about a half an hour ago, no farmers, no food. Well, we know that, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Farming's still the future, just hopefully in a different direction that actually benefits the farmers better. I mean, can you imagine, just hypothetically, if we went forward 10 years and we no longer had to import anything, and in fact farmers had some sort of monopoly on supermarkets and could say, yeah, okay, you know, this is the price, pay it.
Yeah.
That's a potential world that we've never had before.
We just want farmers markets and no supermarkets.
Right, but
that would be ideal.
If the importation was completely removed because farmers could grow or exotic fruit or veg or whatever it was that was demanded, and they could do it, say, in a vertical farm in England. Yeah, they'd have so much extra sort of power to move around, plus their profit margins would go through the roof, and their level of effort would be less.
No, but farmers markets would be ideal, because then every farmer can get a fair price for.
Yeah, I mean, supermarkets rip you people off like mad.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
But obviously, at the moment they can potentially do that as well, because they know that the alternative is that they can just
and all that stuff about you've got to have apples that look like this and be this size and that colour and all that.
You can't believe the wastage. I was watching something the other day that was about apples and pears, and they were throwing away, like, I don't know, 25 tons worth of apples that perfectly edible but weren't perfect shapes, and it's just
that is stupid altogether.
You know. Absolute sanity, but that's what happens a lot, isn't it? Yeah, it's about what it looks like more so than anything else.
And then the farmer's only getting like little pennies per apple, and then all the apples that he's harvested, a fraction of them will only be sold in supermarkets, and then he's getting less and less and less money each time.
But still doing the same amount of work or more.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I go to a local market in a farm. It's kind of like a farmer's market or mixed thing in a park in Dublin, and on a Saturday, and people are quite happy to buy fruit that is not perfectly shaped and all that kind of stuff. You know, they're not bothered about, you know, I mean, it used to be called ugly fruit, but I mean, people are not bothered about that kind of stuff.
Like, you almost feel better buying stuff that you know that hasn't gone to waste. Just came fresh.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous, the idea that just because of the shape of a piece of fruit, it's going to be discarded. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, especially when, you know, you consider for most people the primary factor is taste, and that's exactly the same.
You know,
Yeah,
I
this
think that
was just one place. I think it was in Lincolnshire. This was just one place in a week that they were throwing away. I mean, it was just unbelievable amounts of fruit. And I was like thinking, I can't believe that they can't turn it into cider or do something else.
yeah.
Hello.
Hello, sorry, you've been waiting quite a while.
Hello. Sorry, I just wanted to ask a couple of like questions. So first of all, like, do any of the people who are vegan in here have like pets?
I have a companion dog, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Do you see any moral problem with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay, fair enough. No, I was just curious if you did or not.
Yeah, absolutely. The way that we would look at it potentially now, is that there's people right this moment that are breeding dogs or cats or whomever into existence. And so whilst there are so many that rot in rescues or get dumped on the side of the road or anything like that, we've kind of got an obligation to look after them until we stop breeding.
Right, but okay, fair enough. But in a similar light though, one thing I've always like thought about, because you know I do eat meat myself. One thing I've always thought about a bit about the meat industry. I understand that there's a lot of unnecessary suffering that goes on with the animals in the industry that I don't like either. But one point I've always thought is like a lot of those animals wouldn't even exist if it weren't for people eating them.
Yeah, that's absolutely the truth.
So like in terms of protecting life, like ironically, if the meat industry stopped completely, a lot of life would cease to exist.
It would, but it would no longer be bred into existence to exist, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so we'd still have bovines, we'd still have sheep, we'd still have, you know, other animals that would exist free living, but we just wouldn't breed the particular breeds that we now use commercially.
Well, yeah, I get your point, but we'd also have a lot less of them.
Yeah, we potentially would, but it also means that there'd be a hell of a lot more land, so that the free living beings that exist now could also increase in numbers. I mean, it would be kind of the same as if we completely stopped breeding the breed Rottweiler. Eventually, we're going to stop having them. Like, but
Yeah.
that's not necessarily a bad thing in the long run if we stopped breeding animals into existence simply to exploit. I mean, I've got nothing against Rotties. I was just picked a breed off the top of my
No,
head.
I got that. Yeah.
Well, you know, there are breeds of dog that used to exist that no longer do.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's kind of no demand for them anymore, and there's not anyone sort of whinging about the fact that they no longer exist. It's the fact that we no longer have a demand for them, and that's kind of would be the same sort of thinking. We'd still have free living cows, we'd still have free living hogs, we'd still have free living sheep. All these things would still exist in various places and different environments, and even hopefully some of these animals would come back into sort of rural places in England again. But in terms of should we continue breeding them just because otherwise they would potentially go extinct, like the Holstein, for example, that's by the by. They only exist because we've brought them here. They only exist because we've modified them or selectively bred them to get them to be that way.
No, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. I mean, myself, like, it's always been something, you know, that I've thought is not necessarily morally justifiable, but something I kind of just partake in and indulge in anyway. Not necessarily saying that's the right thing, but at the same time, I personally am not of the view that if I stopped eating meat, anything would actually change. So,
I mean, it absolutely would.
Well, not just me.
I understand why people think that.
Well, I guess if you're talking absolutely, if everybody did that, then yes, of course it would.
Yeah,
But-
well, I mean, even on an individual level, obviously there will be X amount of this, X amount of that, X amount of this that will no longer happen.
Well, it would happen. It just wouldn't be consumed by.
But yeah, I understand the sort of sentiment of what you're saying, but I mean that is exactly it. If everybody did it,
Yeah.
It's
I
a
guess
numbers
for
game.
me it
It's
would
a
kind of
numbers
have to be an all or nothing kind of thing, because like if everybody agreed to do it, then I guess I would too. But it's like if it's going to happen anyway, it's kind of like turning a blind eye to it, really.
Yeah, but there's a kind of there's a distance between the two things. Nobody does it and everybody does it, but there's going to be a time when some people do it, and that's where we are now.
Well, yeah. I mean, do you have just out of curiosity, do any of you like Also, I dropped something. Do any of you go to the gym or anything? I'm not saying that that's a necessity for the gym. I'm just wondering if you do.
No, I don't. Sadly,
No, no, fair
No,
enough.
I kind of wish I did, just so that sometimes I could answer these questions.
I just bought some resistance bands.
Yeah, I mean, Roger actually is more sort of active than I am. I mean,
Yeah, fair enough. No, just for me, obviously, like being, I was a student up till very recently, and getting like that amount of protein in a healthy way that isn't just consuming things like nuts or pea protein, etc., has been would have been a struggle if I hadn't been a meat eater. But that's just like that's
Are
just
you a bodybuilder? Is that what you're saying?
no. Well, I'd say that was a bit of an extreme term to use, bodybuilder. But yeah, like that's sort of what I'm not saying that outshines the importance of animals, obviously. But that's just a part of my life that has been.
I want to ask you a question about humans. Because of what you do in the gym, do you have to eat more than you would do if you weren't in the gym?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you feel about that in a world where 26,000 children die of starvation every day?
Well, again, I feel about that the same way as I would if I just had to eat enough to survive. Does that make sense? Because I can afford to eat enough to survive, it's the same difference.
But you're eating more, aren't you?
Yeah, but there is the problem with food isn't amount of food available; it's the distribution and socioeconomic reasons.
I understand that bit. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I just wonder whether you felt, well, here I am consuming more than I need, and there's all those people over there who can't get it.
Yeah, no, well, I do and I don't, but I guess if we take that thing, then we'd only all eat enough just to survive, and we'd send every penny and every ounce of food we have to the places that need it.
It wouldn't be a bad idea, would it?
Not necessarily, no. But I'm not a socialist either.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't want people to starve either, do you?
No, obviously not. No, but again, I think that we are blind and actively so to a lot of the suffering that goes on in the world. Like, for example, with this whole Israel-Palestine thing right now, obviously it's important to everybody about all the suffering and wrong that's going on there, but there's been suffering and wrong going on all over the world for a long time that people haven't covered in the news. So it seems like there seems to be a preferential bias in what people care about and what people don't.
Well, that's the part.
I mean, there's a reason this live stream is about veganism and not the suffering going on in humans.
Well, yeah. I mean, as far as we're concerned, they're all the same thing.
Well, I mean, I would have to disagree.
Well, the philosophy of veganism opposes oppression and exploitation for all sentient life, so that automatically includes humanity.
Okay, yeah.
And it was formed literally whilst World War II was still going on, so they were definitely concerned with human upon human, what they termed at the time cruelty. But yeah.
But I mean,
that's literally where the foundation was born from.
And some of them refused to fight.
Let me ask you a question. If there was a sheep and a human being, and you were forced at gunpoint to kill one of them, which one would you kill?
Well, so what the choice is: kill one of those or be killed.
Yes.
Kill me.
So you value your own life less than the sheep or the other humans?
Because it's a hypothetical that means nothing. Yeah, kill me.
Well,
okay, but
what about this? If that human was Hitler, the classic case, but if that human was Donald Trump,
yeah,
well, I'd be very torn.
Yeah, true.
Okay. That's your opinion, but what I'm asking you really is, in that case, I mean, do you believe that animals have morality themselves?
Well, that's an interesting one. There is a guy called Sapontis, I think he's called, and he's argued for years and years that other animals have a kind of proto-morality. And Andy always makes the case that, there's cases where carnivores will rescue herbivores sometimes. And one thing that animal behaviorists would claim is that other animals don't care about each other and they would never rescue each other. And then we started finding that other animals would rescue members of their own species. And then we started finding that other animals would rescue members of other species, which the animal behaviorists would say was impossible. It didn't make sense, right?
Yeah, no, I get you. I'm not saying that they don't have some kind of morality to them, but my point more was there that you're choosing between someone who you know is an immoral person, but you seem to be putting all animals into this sort of pedestal where they can't do wrong themselves and they're better than all of us.
No, that's not it. I mean, it's kind of a case of. I mean, I wouldn't say that other animals, have moral agency in the same way that we do, but it's more about just respecting their right to exist. We're not trying to say that animals don't do other things or anything like that. They're not given a get out of jail free card, but obviously a lot of it can be explained by the fact that we don't think they don't have moral agency. They kind of do things instinctively or because they need to. I'm not going to pretend that just dogs, for example, can't communicate in their own ways, because I see that evidence absolutely every day.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but in terms of the philosophical literature, there's a distinction between moral patients and moral agents.
Yes, yeah. Obviously, my main kind of point is that, like, well, I mean, I'm sure you understand this, but there are bad and good things that every being on this planet does, and I agree that, you know, killing and consuming any living being isn't necessarily a moral good and is necessarily not good, but at the same time, you know, a lot of the
Patrick,
animals.
if you're an obligate carnivore, you don't have a choice.
No, of course you don't.
No,
but there are you know, there are certain things animals do that I'm sure if we you know understood them more, we wouldn't agree with either, if you know what I mean.
No, and I think in some circumstances where we could intervene, we would.
Right. Yeah. Like, for example, reproduction in the animal kingdom, I'm sure, isn't very consensual.
Well, certainly I mean, obviously the classic case there is ducks, isn't it? You know, this kind of,
Yeah. But then again, my main point of this is obviously back to the analogy I gave before about, you know, how we sort of have justified or put ourselves on a sort of hierarchy above them, is that we all seem to have this inner understanding, not all of us, but a lot of us, that there is some kind of difference between human life and non-human life.
Can I ask a question? Sorry to be in the middle of your conversation, but what is the what's the purpose and the actual what are you getting at from this message, like the picture up on the screen?
Well, be radical means kind of go to the roots of the problem, and the roots of the problem, as we would say it, would be justice. So if things are unjust, we would oppose it. If things were just, we would be in favor of it. And so, as it says there, veganism is opposed to the exploitation of sentient life. So we don't want to exploit anyone if we can help it. And so then it's a question of how can that be brought about as an idea.
So you're vegan yourself, yeah?
For 44 years.
For 44? Wow. So what do you think is wrong about people like eating meat and stuff like that?
Well, see, I don't like to phrase it in, you know, you're wrong and all that. But what it is, we would say that by doing that, it kind of commits a rights violation or is involved in a rights violation. And so we would see that other animals are rights bearers, and that means that when we use them, that's a rights violation in terms of animal rights philosophy. So animal rights philosophy is based on human rights ideas, right? And so it's just like an extensionist idea.
Okay, so you know, when obviously there are places like factories and things like that where they have chickens and like goats and maybe cows and things like that, like any types of animals, and they're cooped up in like massive factories and like mass murdered and stuff like that. Obviously, is that what you're trying to solve, or is it like all killing of animals?
No, what we would say there is that makes the fundamental wrong even worse, because that's where you get phrases like cruel, or you get suffering and this kind of stuff. The fundamental wrong for us as animal rights vegans is using them in the first place.
So your goal is to like not use animals at all?
Yes.
But wouldn't that slow down production in every single aspect in life almost?
I don't understand that question. Slow down production?
So clothing, things like it's difficult to word it, but like I've lost my mind.
No,
it happens to us all. Don't worry,
I know what you were trying to get at, in the sense that because we use so many animal products for everything now, that if that there was that shift very quickly, everything would stop. But obviously, I can't really see that ever happening in such a shift change. I mean, already now there are so many alternatives to so many things that as things grow, as a transition happens, and there's more and more people that go vegan, there'll just be more and more new companies or companies that start.
Yeah, it's like a sliding scale, isn't it?
Yeah, I can't see there ever being a time where there's too much demand for vegan products and like infrastructure comes to a halt because of it. I just think that they'll grow naturally together.
So right, yeah, I understand you.
So which one of you said that you have a dog as a pet?
Me.
I do.
So I just saw someone raise something in the chat and I thought I'd ask for them. Do you feed them a vegan diet?
Yeah, plant-based diet, yeah.
Do you think that's like okay?
Yeah, because their nutritional needs are all met.
Okay, but like, I mean, isn't it kind of like taking away from their? I mean, this sounds like a bit of a, this is me playing devil's advocate a bit here, but isn't it kind of shouldn't it be kind of their right to have what like they've had for years and generations?
Well, he doesn't really know any different, and as I say,
no, but neither does a chicken locked in a cage.
No, but what I mean is, you're saying like what he's known for. He hasn't. He's never known any. He's never.
Okay. But like a human being who's been born in a cardboard box, it doesn't know any different. But it doesn't mean it's right, does it?
Well, no, but I don't understand what the wrong is.
Well, the wrong is surely that they are dogs are carnivorous animals.
An omnivore.
They're born to. Sorry, carry on.
In the same, and it's no different really than me. It's like he's an omnivore, like I'm an omnivore. All our nutritional needs are met through our diet. That's it.
When did? Sorry, this might be my lack of knowledge, and I apologise if that's the case. But when did I didn't realise dogs were omnivores.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe that's. I didn't really realise that.
I mean, a cat isn't, but there's still a plant-based diet can be adequate for a cat as long as, again, it's sufficient in terms of all their nutritional requirements.
Yeah. No, I can understand that, but all I mean is it's just it does like seem a bit, it does seem like you're putting your own moral justifications onto your pet, who should like be able to make their own choices, kind of thing. Well, which obviously I know they can't because they are your pet by definition. But
just to follow up on that question,
the other way around, right? If I'd have answered that question, a healthy dog, so like I haven't got any gripes with it. I'm more than honest and to say that if there was a problem, let's just say, we went through every plant-based food that existed over the last couple of years and he didn't like any of them, then I would make sure that his nutritional needs were met with, a sort of a bit tongue that I had to go back to buying animal products for him. But yeah, I wouldn't let him suffer.
But again, not to, this is just, again, I don't necessarily mean this. I'm just asking what, I feel like the gap in your argument is. You mentioned before that, he doesn't know any different, etc. But surely,
well, that was only answering your argument. I mean, I wouldn't usually use that as justification.
No, fair enough. Yeah,
I'm concerned is that I don't commit rights violations, and so therefore I'm not going to buy them for someone else in my family.
Right. No. Okay. So okay. So all I really meant is if he doesn't know any different, like he can't know that he'd enjoy himself more.
Yeah, well, yeah, I suppose you could make that counter argument that potentially if he had a different choice of food, he might equally enjoy it. Yeah, that's potentially
like he could survive without
but
going
whilst
on 2
he's in
walks
my
a day,
care, which will be for the rest of his life, that will never happen.
Right, fair enough. And I guess you're right, it would make you a hypocrite if you did.
Exactly.
Another argument,
like
of course,
unless there was some sort of real detriment to his health.
Can I just follow up on that question really quickly?
Yeah.
What dog do you have? And also on top of that, like what type of vegan product do you feed your dog?
So he's actually an exempted pit bull. So he came into my life because I rescued him from a back garden. He was supposed to stay with me as a foster. He ended up getting seized from me by the police because of his breed. So I went to court, and I am now his exempted keeper for the rest of his life.
And what diet does he feed on? Like, what type of foods does he have?
So the food that he's on at the moment is called Omni, OMNI.
Right, and that's fully plant-based, is it?
Yeah.
And do you think that your dog would prefer, if you were to put a plate out full of what you said, what he usually has, and a plate full of steak, what do you think he would go for the steak, or?
I'm not sure, maybe, but it's kind of irrelevant because.
Well, the thing is, it's not though, is it? Because he doesn't have to be taken on walks or etc. I mean, he could survive walking around the kitchen.
Yeah, of course.
But what I'm saying is, he could enjoy and have a far better quality of life if it weren't for you putting your own moral views onto your dog.
That's not the case, is it? I mean, I've had him for 7 years now. He's been on a plant-based diet the entire time. He's absolutely fine.
I'm not disagreeing that he is absolutely fine. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, there's no extra quality of life that he would have by me feeding him a meat-based food.
Well, I'm going to be honest.
Well, there's no extra quality of life you would have
you can disagree with me, but the Vets Association do agree with me, so that's fine.
Fair enough.
Well, I mean, in fact, there are a lot of vets now that will actually recommend a plant-based diet because a lot of dogs have got colitis and things like that we don't actually fully understand.
That makes sense.
And commercial dog food is full of shite, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really
of course. I don't have a dog personally, so I don't know. I can't say I feed my dog anything.
Well, my dog usually feeds on anything, so that could be chicken, it could be raw chicken, it could be minced meat, it could be any sort of canned dog food, or usually it's tuna or something like that because my dog really enjoys it and it's good for her fur and it's good for her teeth and things like that. But yeah, I don't know, that's just really my
and I mean that's got the same anecdotal weight as my dog's got really good coat, really good teeth, and has been on a plant-based diet. So yeah, it's by the by.
I'll tell you my position on the domesticated dogs is the fact that they're very, very social and they're pack animals. And there's nothing more that they love is to share the food that you're having. They absolutely love that. Right. And so if you were to, rather than kind of provide separate meals for them and everything, if you included them in your mealtime, they absolutely love that. Socially, that makes them feel absolutely brilliant.
That makes sense. I'm not saying that wouldn't be about something that they enjoy. But again, I'm just sort of asking the question.
They get lots from it. That's what we're saying. And in terms of the diet aspect of it, because they've got this, they're fairly flexible. It means that they're not losing, they're actually gaining socially. But so I would probably see it that way, that in the end that they gain quite a lot because their bond with their human becomes incredibly strong if you do it that way.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. But again, obviously the same could be argued if you both ate meat.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
No, I get your point though. Just one other interesting thing. I've got to go soon.
It's a case of ethics and morals all the time. So for us, it always just comes back to the same ethics and morals. So whilst we can do these things, we choose not to because they're wrong.
Okay. But and you believe it's objectively wrong?
Well, it's wrong as in the sense that if I was in the victim's position, I wouldn't want it. So that's enough for me.
Would you? Weird question, but would you, if you were to be killed, for example, by another human being, and I know I've been told not to use that word actually. If your life were to come to an end, then, and this is just a strange point to make, but I want to know what you think. Would you rather your body and what was your body go to waste, or would you want to just be sort of buried in decay?
This is an interesting one for me, because it goes back to this thing about the idea of food waste. Food waste is usually kind of, well, if humans don't eat it or their companions don't eat it, then it's wasted. Whereas, in fact, every single thing that is discarded around the world gets eaten by someone. And so there's no such thing as food waste in a sense.
Right. But not every single thing. Like, things do go to waste and decay and become. What do you mean they go back into the soil and then regrow things?
Yeah, bacteria will eat them. Insects will eat them. Grubs will eat them, and so I mean, somebody's going to eat us eventually, unless we get burnt and spread around as ashes.
Yeah,
and I mean that's another really big part of why our soil is so shit, because there's so little free living animals that actually die in the wild.
Yeah, that's why we need fake fertilizer, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like the amount that are obviously consumed in various ways and they never return to the earth like they're supposed to. Yeah, it has a huge sort of knock-on factor everywhere else.
Yeah, interesting point, that.
Do you? So another question quickly. Do you believe that the diet you have causes little to no suffering of animals? And I'm not going to be talking about avocados and things like that.
No, I don't believe that.
Okay. I mean, you just want to minimize as much suffering as you can.
No, we want to eliminate it if we can. But the problem is some of the problems are kind of structural. I've always said that some of the structural problems requires for there to be more vegans to sort that out. So if there was a bigger vegan community, which means that we have more socio-economic political power, then we can sort out the things that you can't just do in terms of individual kind of consumer choices. I think our friend's gone.
But yeah, and I suppose obviously influences those things too. I mean, every time we have a conversation with a farmer, regardless of whether we agree or not on anything else, they normally will admit that the way that we're farming at the moment can't continue. Like, it's not sustainable.
Right.
The world sort of can't continue to exist the way that it is. So yeah, I mean, even if it wasn't anything to do with veganism and it was simply because the demand was too big, then when money starts going in this direction and being thrown at this situation, we'll see real change then as well, even if that's for the wrong reasons. But at the moment, no one really cares. Right.
Yeah. No, I hear what you mean. And this is the last thing I'm going to say. I don't want it to be taken poorly. I hope you see through what I'm trying to say. But if you have it, do you say you have a
sense of humor now? Don't forget.
You say you had a pit bull, correct?
Yeah,
yeah. This might. I don't want to be like gruesome or anything, but do you believe that there's a high likelihood if something bad were to happen to you, God forbid. Well, I don't believe in God, but yeah, hopefully not. But if something were to happen to you, do you believe that your dog, who I'm not putting any bad intentions into, would take advantage of your body and eat you?
You mean like, say, if I passed away from whatever reason, and
and even if there was other food in the cupboard?
No, I would say no, because there'd be someone that would come and find me too soon, I would imagine.
Right. Okay. Let's say hypothetically.
In a situation, say, where I had
I think hypothetically it would be the case. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say, right, I had no friends, no family, nobody even knew I existed, let alone that I died. And I think there's a chance that
I've said this before, haven't I, Andy? That
and I mean, usually the case, sadly, for makes it even more gruesome, is it would be my face that would be the first thing that would be consumed.
Yeah. I mean, that's curious why that is the case. I know what you mean because I've heard stories. But
I have
They're
no
trying to
idea.
make the world
Some
more
people
beautiful,
argue
Andy.
it's the scent. What did you say? Sorry.
So they're trying to make the world more beautiful by getting rid of your face.
Yeah, some people make the argument that it's the scent. It's
Right,
where
okay.
I honestly don't know, but yeah, it is a kind of common. I mean, obviously this isn't a situation that happens very often, but when it does happen, you do find that it's the face quite often.
Right. One of you, by the way, I know one of you's been vegan for, I think you said 44 years.
Yeah, that's Roger.
Right. Okay. And how long have you personally been vegan?
It'll be 10 years in January.
10 years in January. So both, I'm assuming at one point or another in both of your lives, you ate meat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
For
I was wondering
26 years.
what was the main cause for you to sort of make a big change? Did something specific happen? Did you see something, or
Yeah,
did you just slowly?
so initially I went vegetarian because of a Facebook post.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
What was it? Was it one of those
literally-
like slaughterhouse?
Yeah, I don't think it was slaughterhouse. I think it was chickens, and I think it was actually just video footage of like
People walking on them and shit.
Well, yeah, essentially them
Yeah.
all just on top of one another, and the
Yeah.
acres of shit
Yeah.
underneath. I think that's what it was, and I kind of made the decision right away. And then I actually got involved with a group that were called Rescuing Animals in Danger, which is actually how
Right.
I ended it with my dog. That kind of used to act
Right.
when the RSPCA wouldn't act. That was essentially
Yeah.
what
They're not corporations like that aren't very good.
And then actually I spent some time observing a puppy farm, and coincidentally the place that I was spending this time on happened to be a dairy farm, and whilst I was kind of scouting the puppy farm, I witnessed a calf be born and be taken away from their mum, and the kind of sounds and wails of mum still what lives with me. And I literally came home from Wales that day. I emptied my fridge, we emptied the cupboards. I made the decision like on the journey home that like this would never happen again.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
And that was my journey.
And what's sorry, is it your name, Roger?
Yeah.
Yeah,
What's your like
it's,
story of transition?
I think as a kid, because I've been asked this question loads of times, I think as a kid, I had this idea about fairness and about what was fair
Right.
and what wasn't fair. And I have visions of at a school. I was jumping from desk to desk, trying to let wasps out when everybody else was trying to kill them. And then I was also a projectionist. And so there was a time when an usher, I was in the staff room, and an usher took her shoe off because there was a crane fly going up the wall, you know, like a flying daddy long legs we used to call them.
Yes. Yeah.
And she used to go, she went bang, right? And she said, "Oh, I hate them. They're so ugly." And I said, well, you know, I think you're pretty ugly, but I wouldn't do that to you. And it just didn't seem fair, right?
Yeah.
And then when I read animal rights theory, then it kind of gave me a philosophical understanding of the feelings that I had. That's how it happened to me.
That's interesting. I was just curious as to where you both what
Yeah.
necessarily, because a lot of people have similar experiences like that. Because I obviously have known. I'm 22 now, but over my life I've known a lot of people who've.
Yeah, but you know, my feelings about fairness, for example, was I couldn't understand why other kids of my own age would smash up telephone boxes. I couldn't understand that, right? I was thinking, hang on a minute, you know, what if somebody, I mean, this is before mobile phones and all that. You know, what if somebody needs to make a phone call?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Obviously, I'm not advocating vandalism.
Showing your age, Roger. I can't remember the last time I seen a phone box.
Yeah. But so on that note, do either of you consider any form of animal a pest?
I
believe in the term?
I certainly wouldn't use that word to describe them.
Okay.
But obviously, there are certain things like the procurement of food, for example, where there are threats to that food source from other animals that need to be considered. Yeah, but I think that can potentially, even at the moment, be achieved completely sort of violation free. And I definitely think that going forward, we can definitely achieve that. Yeah.
I think I might be different from you, Andy, in there. I think I might quite think of deers as quite pesty. I mean, they cause a hell of a lot of damage.
Okay, but obviously you still never do harm to one.
Well, you would try and work out what the score was and everything, and try to kind of, bring people who understand these situations. I mean, like for example, in Dublin, they kind of kill them once a year, with high-powered rifles. So we would try to not do that, and so a lot of vegans have talked about shooting them with contraceptives, which on the face of it is a rights violation.
Deer are a problem that either one of the three proposed solutions offered, all essentially from a vegan point of view, are not great. They're all utilitarian, aren't they? Either introduction of predators, obviously extermination via human, or the contraception method. But all of them are obviously in some way.
But Andy,
well, if we get into utilitarianism,
trees, right? They do. They do a lot of damage to trees, don't they?
Absolutely, but I think we also have to consider the fact that the only reason that we've got these numbers is because we've already eliminated the natural predators.
Well, more than that, I mean, in Ireland, for example, a lot of the deers in Ireland were imported, like Japanese breeds, for example.
For what purpose?
Well, sometimes it's to do with the aesthetics and the kind of country estates and all that kind of shit, but it's often to do with hunting.
But don't you find that like collectively across the world? I mean, look at the problems that Australia have with what they would call "quote unquote" invasive species. Almost all. Yeah,
we brought them. It's the same. Same as
none of them are natural animals. They've all been brought in for whatever reason, and that's why there's a problem with the
half of the species in Australia can fucking kill you.
Yeah, I mean, like one of the first bits of research I did was looking at oh God, what they called them? Not white-headed ducks, but ruddy ducks. They were called ruddy ducks. Yeah. And ruddy ducks were brought in from North America for some kind of collection kind of thing, in the same way as minks were. And then these ruddy ducks started to fly down to Spain in the summer and kind of have it off with the local white-headed duck. Because it was one of the rare times where this kind of interbreeding was possible. And so they were able to actually produce an offspring. So the Spanish hunters were absolutely outraged that these ruddy ducks coming down from Wales were mating with their, inverted commas, white-headed ducks. And so therefore they wanted people back in Wales to cull them, to stop them going on their holidays down to Wales. Right, but this was an entire problem we've created.
Yeah.
But quickly on, because I can't remember which one of you, whether it was Andy or Roger, said it, but you were talking about utilitarianism, and if you look at it from a sort of quantitative utilitarian position, you could argue that, say, a group in a country with less access to regular food than we have here in the UK, if the ending of an animal's life, ideally through minimal suffering, i.e. a quick death, were to bring a whole village or family sustenance and pleasure for a very long time or high intensity, then you could argue from that perspective that actually morally it's not bad.
That's not usually the way that vegans look at utilitarianism. For example, there is a rights-based lawyer and philosopher called Gary Francione, and he says that kind of real life, as it were, forces us to be utilitarian now and again, even if our position is rights-based. What you got in mind is things like the fact that we spay and neuter animal companions. Well, that on the face of it is a rights violation. But if we didn't do that, we'd have a massive population.
Of course. But then again, if you looked at it from the original Mill's qualitative and quantitative utilitarianism, then you could argue that actually if there were more life created, therefore there'd be more joy to be had through that life created, i.e. more. If there's 10 dogs will enjoy life.
Well, not if 9 of them die straight away because of
disease and genetic illness, etc.
Yeah.
No, that's a fair point. Getting quite philosophical now, so
that's fine. Yeah, that's quite sort of encouraged on this live.
Yeah, fair enough.
We're willing to have these conversations.
This is getting into more like rather than just ethics, we're talking about general philosophical theories. But
Yeah, and I mean this is although it's quite sort of niche, I suppose. But a lot of vegans get their perspective from Peter Singer, who obviously is very utilitarian.
yeah, no, I've heard,
They're very
I've
sort
heard
of
of
like
Peter Singer. Yeah.
cruelty based or abuse based or
Hmm.
suffering based.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of something we wouldn't agree with. We would be far more rights based if
Well,
obviously.
Peter Singer is in a lot of doo-doo at the moment.
Why? What's it done this time? Is it female related?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Oh, okay, well,
You can call me morally wrong for this, but I just have a very slight, I wouldn't even say disdain. That's too strong of a word. But there is a part of me that thinks a lot of people. I'm not accusing you guys of anything, because you're more than well within your right to be talking about this. But as I mentioned earlier, I think I am a bit human biased in the sense that there is so much human suffering going on that, to me, that's more important to sort of put into the public eye than.
We'd see it as interrelated, you know.
Yeah,
I know.
we would see all
I think with intelligence and IQ comes a further depth of suffering that animals may or may not be able to experience.
Yeah, but I mean, what we'd say there is that, you know, regardless of how you think of the cognitive capabilities of other animals, the fact that we prefer to create feed for them rather than food for humans. So
Okay.
we would take it that way, wouldn't we? So if you prefer humans, you know, I always used to say to people, you know, if you imagine two population explosions, one of which was a human, one of which was other animal, and there's only enough food to feed one, which one should get priority? And they always say the humans, and yet that's not what we do. You know,
No, of course it isn't. Of course it isn't. And that my point isn't, oh, the world is correct as it is, because it certainly isn't. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that I think that the level of suffering experienced by humans, both in depth and breadth, and intensity and complexity, based on our psychological ability to comprehend suffering, is far more to me.
Far more, yeah. There is a counter argument, which is the fact that if you know, people use the kind of dentist argument, which is if you say to a human being, this is going to hurt you like a lot, but it's only going to be for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, for a non-human point of view, they don't know that.
Of course, that's a very good point. Yeah. Like when you leave your house and your dog like sits at the door, they think you're gone forever, sort of thing.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. That's a good point. But I again, like, humans, as far as I know, and I'm gonna have to wrap it up soon because I've got to go to bed, unfortunately. But
yeah, me too.
But again, my argument to that would be that humans can experience a level of depth of thought of suffering that goes beyond that of, you know, a dog might feel sad, but that's normally where that, I mean, obviously I'm not a animal psychologist, but that's, as far as my understanding of a dog's brain goes, or an animal's brain goes, that's pretty much where it ends. Same way they know they feel hungry, but they don't know.
Yeah, I get that, and I think that's a very common view. I would say to that is that there's people like Professor Mark Beckhoff and cognitive ethology as a academic discipline. Now, they've started to find out things about other animals that we never dreamed of being true. You know, and so in that sense, we shouldn't necessarily, without evidence, kind of just limit their experience.
No,
because every time we do, they seem to, for example, break that. I mean, like, you know, chickens, for example, they can learn from watching TV, which is a trivial example, but there's loads of examples where...
Is that true? A chicken can learn from watching TV?
Yeah,
wow.
It's interesting. Well, what happened was, right, they did this experiment where with the mother chickens, they showed on TV where the food was, and then they kind of put these different coloured containers down, and so the chickens then went to the right colour, right, and then they showed their chicks the same thing, but they switched the colour, and so the chicks were going to the red container, and the mothers were trying to direct them to the yellow one, because they thought the chicks were going to the wrong one. So there's a lot more going on in animal life than we know.
Oh yes, I don't want to come across as if I'm either diminishing what I can't possibly comprehend, or I'm only coming from the place of what we do know is that the extent and depth in which humans can suffer. That's what we know for sure. I'm saying that obviously animals could be far more
I'd
complex.
say that, Patrick, is that's what we think for sure.
That's sorry. No. Well, no, I'm saying we know that humans can suffer and the depth in which they can suffer. That is for sure. But we don't know the comparison. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. I might go with that.
Yeah. And that what I mean by that is we can assume, and again, tell me if you think I'm wrong, that
you're wrong.
Tell me if you think I'm wrong that a rat cannot suffer to the depth and intensity that a human being can.
That bit I don't know.
Yeah,
As I said, I think I can assume. I'm not going to go with no. No is a moral. No is an absolute statement. We don't really know.
I think the best thing for us to do is be open to that and go. We don't actually know, but it may be. Like it's kind of like all things considered and all that kind of stuff. It's just a question that, as Andy was saying a while ago, in terms of what we have considered about other animals, it's been pretty limited.
Yeah, absolutely. We only ever do. I mean, obviously, a lot of science, or almost all science, in fact, depends on grants, depends on budgets. So if you go to some executives and say, look, can we have X amount of money because we want to find out if a rat gets heartbroken, they're going to go fuck off. If you say I want to test on this particular species because I want to bring some lipstick out, here's the money. So like,
yes, no, that's a very good point.
Kind of research things that suit our benefit. So a lot of these things, it's just pure ignorance. We assume or we pretend that we know, but in all honesty, we genuinely don't. I mean, the one way that I would potentially look at that hypothetical that you just asked. I mean, obviously it's only assumption. We haven't got a clue, but the rat may well actually feel worse potentially than we do about suffering loss or something like that because they can't vocalize in the way we could. I mean,
I guess it's behaviorism, isn't it? Really,
say we were widowed. We could go to counselling. We'd have family support.
Everybody
would sort of come round and put an arm around us. Whereas, so actually, we could make the argument, I suppose, that they suffer worse because they can't do those.
I think acknowledgement of complexity would be a good start for us, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and same with like injustice. We can go to the police. We can ring we can email our MP or write to our MP. We can go to the higher court systems if we don't get justice in the county courts. All these kind of things. We've got methods and avenues. They might be a pain and they might be long-winded and they might even be really expensive. But there are avenues where we can kind of complain or get a voice heard where they can't.
But my only argument to that is that we know. We do know for a fact that people with severely severely diminished intelligence quotas are capable of less intense suffering than people with higher intelligence.
Well, it used to be said that extroverts feel less pain than introverts.
What is it? And it's not anymore.
Well, I mean, it kind of fits in terms of professional sports, for example, and stuff like that. Like those who would shy away from putting themselves in for a tackle.
I get what you mean. Yeah. Okay.
Sure, I think in 2023 an equal argument could be made the other way around. I mean, if you considered mental health.
Yeah. But I mean, you've heard of that whole, the troubled genius kind of thing, where people are so clever it kind of, almost kills them. Oh, actually, I'm not supposed to use that word.
Stop talking about me.
No, but yeah, and that could be argued either way. I guess it's kind of a hit neither here or there, is it? You could argue both ends. If someone's more intelligent, they're capable of further depths of suffering, whereas if someone's less intelligent, they're less likely to have the means to get around that suffering. So.
I think that's a complex idea. Yeah. The idea that ignorance could create more suffering, couldn't it?
But it's also a known term that ignorance can very well be bliss. I mean, I'm not sure. I hope I'm not offending anyone here, but my
lack of understanding.
Are either of you two? Hello.
Sorry, I didn't hear the last word.
So are either of you two religious?
No.
No, okay, neither am I. My argument is that, and I'm not in any way coming for anybody, but my argument is that like religious people have this kind of blissful ignorance in a way, because they don't, they have a lot less existential dread than us, we maybe do, in terms of, deep philosophical thought. And that's just my argument for like, oh, well, the less you have to think about the ins and outs of the universe and how this shit, how this stuff came to be, the less you sort of worry about it. And that's kind of what I'm saying in terms of ignorance being bliss.
There's definitely something to that. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm sure a religious person would object to your characterization of that.
It is.
Oh, I'm sure they would.
Truth, isn't it? I mean, everything that's good is God's. Everything that's bad is Satan.
Yes.
As long as you repent for your sins, you can more or less do whatever.
Well, the idea of
at fundamental level,
scares people.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, the modern day vegans have got their own version of that, Andy. Everything that's good is vegan, and everything that is bad is non-vegan.
Well, I hope that you guys continue to have productive discussions, and I've got to go now. But that was
thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much for joining us. And obviously, that's kind of the style and the vibe that we always try and put out. Nobody learns anything if we just spend time shouting.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you get a lot of people who say, "Oh, you're idiots for being vegan" and stuff like that.
We get a lot of people that join with one particular attitude and leave with another. Put it that way, yeah.
Yeah. No, I get you. But yeah, thank you very much anyway.
No, thank you. I am literally might as well going to wrap it up now anyway. So thank you everyone for joining us. I'm sure we'll be back tomorrow at some point, Roger, if that's cool.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot, Andy. You take care, mate.
And you. See you later, everyone. Thank you.